It's easier to reinvent yourself when you have a choice. You can plan, you can prepare, you can create your own reinvention. But what if reinvention is forced on you? That's what happened to Tara Gidus Collingwood when her husband was suddenly diagnosed with cancer and passed away just a few months later, leaving her with 2 little boys and a life she did not plan.
There I was, 37 years old, these 2 little boys, and this was not the plan that we had in life. And so, I just had to say, okay, now what?
How Tara reinvented herself when she had no other option. Up next on Reinvention at Any Age. How did you end up in this kind of situation? And that changed the whole trajectory of your life. This is my light, and I'm going to let it shine. Even if it's uncomfortable, if the change is for the better, it's worth it. Don't be scared. Prepare.
Reinvention is possible. Go make it happen for you today.
Thank you so much for joining me on today's episode. I'm Amy Sweezey, and I am passionate about helping you navigate through your reinvention. My guest today is known for her extensive work in the field of nutrition. She is currently the sports dietitian at the U.S. National Tennis Association campus in Orlando, but she's also worked with the Orlando Magic, the WWE, and the University of Central Florida Athletics, to name just a few. She's the author of Pregnancy, Cooking, and Nutrition for Dummies and co-author of Flat Belly Cookbook for Dummies. Tara Gidus Collingwood is no stranger to reinvention. At the age of 29, after feeling bored in her job working at a hospital, she decided to reinvent her career by starting her own business. Then, at the age of 37, Tara was forced to reinvent herself again after tragically losing her husband, making her a sudden widow and single mom. Now, at the age of 50, Tara is remarried, heavily involved with the Modern Widows Club, and starting yet another new business in the world of chocolate. Please welcome Tara Gidus Collingwood to the podcast. Hi, Tara.
Oh, hey, Amy, that was the best introduction ever. Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here.
I'm so happy that you decided to join us. Obviously, you have a lot of things in your tool chest, a lot of things that you have done. But let's just start at the beginning. Tell us a little bit about your life as a dietitian in the world of nutrition. Is that what you studied in college? How did this all come about?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm one of those rare people who actually knew when I was in high school what I wanted to do for a living and have stuck with it now for over 25 years. So I always wanted to do sports nutrition. And at the time, sports nutrition wasn't really a thing yet. It was really up and coming. And so I decided to go to Purdue University, which was out of state. I grew up in Wisconsin. My dad's like, that's going to cost a lot more money. I said, I don't care. I want to go to a place where I'm going to get the education that I want because I'm going to be the next dietitian for the Green Bay Packers, Dad. And he was like, whatever. And so he said, well, we saved for you to go to state school, but if you want to go out of state, then you need to, earn extra money. So I did. I worked my butt off all through college and left without any loans and then moved to Florida. Didn't go back to Wisconsin, but then became the dietitian for the Orlando Magic and all of that. So never made it to the Green Bay Packers, but did make it to pro sports.
And did you love sports as a kid? Is that what made you kind of want to go into that field as well?
Yeah, I mean, I've always been active. I, run marathons and now recently triathlons. And so I've always been, on the active side, never was a collegiate athlete or a professional athlete or anything, but just always love performance. I love helping people to perform at their best, whether they're an athlete or whether they're, a stay-at-home mom or a corporate executive. That's really what I like to do is help people to fuel their body, exercise their body, move their body, sleep right in order to really have their best energy.
And I feel like a lot, like nowadays, it's a little bit more, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe you can clarify if this is the right perception that I have, but that people are more interested in nutrition now and they're paying attention to the ingredients in their food and they want to be healthier and maybe not make those fast food choices that we've had in the past. But when you were kind of coming up through college, which I assume around my time, late 80s, early 90s, it wasn't really as much of a thing. I don't think as many people were talking about diet and nutrition. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're spot on. And I mean, I even tried to become a vegetarian when I was in second grade, and that just was not heard of in Wisconsin in the 80s. Like what? My mom's like, no, you have to eat meat. I'm like, but I don't want to kill pigs.
Ah, yes.
I mean, and now fast forward, you've got people that are being raised vegetarian as kids, and that just wasn't heard of back then. So anyway, yeah, I do think that nutrition has come a long way in terms of being in the spotlight of one of the huge pillars of health. And one of the things that I try to do though is make sure that people understand that there is no such thing as perfect. I'm not perfect. I don't expect you to be perfect. That we can eat things that aren't necessarily good for us, like the chocolate,
Bad
and
food.
right. But it's all in moderation. It's all in balance.
So you go to your dream college and you get your dream career and you're working in this job and you're loving it. You're in your 20s and you decide that you don't love it so much anymore and you want to reinvent yourself as an entrepreneur. What was behind that decision?
Well, it wasn't that I didn't love it necessarily, but I think I had just sort of outgrown what I was doing at the time. So I was working, in a hospital system, working with senior executives, outpatient, I was never inpatient dietitian. But, and so working in kind of that field of performance, but I really wanted to get into that sports side of things. And I also became a spokesperson for, it's now called the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics. And so I was one of 30 dietitians that represented 80,000 dietitians to the media. And so I would do, probably 10, 12, 15 interviews a month with reporters on, nutrition. And so I was, going to meetings with these 30 dietitians that were like the creme de la creme of dietitians in the country. And a lot of them owned their own businesses. And so I was like, oh, and they had written books and all this stuff. And I was, in awe of these other dietitians and said, I want to be like that. And so I said, you know what, I've learned a lot in my 5 years of, working in the hospital system. And so I'm ready to forge out on my own and see what I can do. And that's what I did.
And it sounds so easy on paper. There's a lot of people who feel the same way. They're working in this job and they want to be their own boss and start their own business, but it is not an easy task. What are some of the tips that you have for people that are like, oh, yeah, I want to be an entrepreneur? What were some of the things that you did?
Well, I had an anchor job. So I made sure that I had one job that I was doing about 10 hours a week that could, if all else failed, I at least had something coming in from that little anchor consulting gig. And then I would do some individual clients and market myself. And it was really networking. I mean, you have to network and you have to put yourself out there when you're an entrepreneur, because if you sit back, they aren't going to come. You have to put yourself out there. And so that's what I had to learn, is to be more proactive, to, go out and meet people and ask, how can I serve you? How can I make this work? And the other thing is, when you're an entrepreneur, everybody's like, oh, you get to make your own schedule and all this stuff. And it's like, yes, but I don't get paid for days off. If I'm not working, right? I'm not earning. So there is definitely, I don't get health benefits. I don't get retirement benefits. I have to do all of that myself. So there's definitely, a lot of positives and negatives to working for yourself.
And I know you've done a lot of media. I mean, that's how you and I first met more than 20 years ago, when you came to my TV station and did interviews on our morning show. So why was the media side of the business so important, would you say?
Oh my gosh. I mean, the first time that I looked into a camera, it just takes your breath away. You probably remember that too. And you kind of freeze up. But I don't know. I guess I was a natural and just became very comfortable with the camera and just talking to people like we're talking, And so I just really enjoyed that part of it and realized that, when you can reach such a large audience, when you can get that media coverage. And I loved doing the morning TV spots. And then I got more into doing some spokesperson work with companies and started doing, some national TV shows and doing spokesperson work on there. And so it just sort of blossomed into a whole nother thing. And that's really how I got a lot of the other work that I had, because when you're doing, 12, 15 media interviews a month, and they weren't all TV, of course, some were on websites, some were in newspapers, magazines. Remember magazines, what they used to come in the mail? And I would be quoted in Runner's World. And I'm like, I've arrived. And so, but when you Google sports nutrition or just dietitian or nutrition in Orlando, my name would pop up because I was quoted so many different places. So it made it look like I knew what the heck I was talking about because I was like quoted in all these different places. And so then all of a sudden the Orlando Magic called me and they said, "Hey, can you come work with our athletes?" And I was like, let me think about that. Yes. So that's really how it happened.
So that media involvement really did help your business grow.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it gets you that recognition, and the more you're out there, the more people, think you know what you're talking about. And I like to believe I do know what I'm talking about, and that I'm credible and science based and all of that. But yes, I think that really that was the turning point in my career, was when I became a spokesperson, had all the media coverage, and then was able to kind of go out and launch my own business, because then I had the connections and knew how to network.
Yeah, and I think if you didn't know what you were talking about, the Orlando Magic wouldn't have tracked you down. So.
Thank you.
So you're working as an entrepreneur, you've got this great business, your hands in lots of different things, loving life, happily married. Now you have 2 young boys, and your husband is diagnosed with cancer, such a young age. Can you share a little bit about that time in your life?
Yeah, absolutely. So I had just had my son Basil in 2007. And so I was like, I'm just going to maybe work a little bit, maybe 20 hours a week, kind of take a back seat. Well, then my husband was a builder, and you know what happened in 2007, 2008 with the downturn in the economy, especially in the real estate and building industry. And so his business just tanked really fast. And so I had to reinvent myself and really figure out, how can I support this family? And that's when I started doing a lot more spokesperson work, because that paid the most. And then unfortunately, then in 2011, he was diagnosed with stage 4 stomach cancer, and was told, "I would be surprised if you were alive a year from now." And so that really brings you to your knees and gives you that perspective of, okay, this is what we're dealing with. And so we're going to, fight like heck to try to beat this. And he had a very positive attitude, but unfortunately did succumb to the cancer and passed away in December of 2012, about 11 months after he was diagnosed.
Were there signs? Did he have any idea that he was sick? Was it a huge shock?
Huge shock. I mean, he and I were running marathons all over the world together, super healthy, married to a dietitian. That's the thing with cancer, is like, you just don't know. And, I look back and I go, was it the stress of the downturn in the economy and trying to, do all that? And you just don't know what causes cancer always. And so, but there I was, 37 years old with, at the time they were 3 and 5 when he passed. And, these 2 little boys, and this is not the plan. This was not the plan that we had in life. And so, I just had to say, okay, now what? Now what do I do with my life? Do I, sit in bed and cry and pull the covers over my head? And there were days when, of course, that happened. Or do I go forward and say, I got to support these 2 little boys, and I need to be a role model. I need to be an example. I need to be a pillar of strength. I need to show them that you can keep going. And so there were days when, it was very difficult, and I was, a puddle of tears. But in the main, I really tried. That's what kept me going, was those 2 little boys, and knowing that I had to, support them and keep them going in their lives.
So then how was it that you came to be involved with the Modern Widows Club?
Yeah, so about 2 years after I lost Stephen is when I was introduced to Carolyn Moore, who is the founder of the Modern Widows Club, and her and I just instantly connected. We were about 10 years apart. She had lost her husband 10 years prior, had 2 little girls, the exact same ages as my little boys when she lost her husband. And so, and she had just started this organization in 2011. And so it was, fairly new at the time. Now it's huge worldwide, 40 chapters around the country. It has evolved into an incredible organization that helps so many people. But at the time I was, of course, just taking in all of the resources, going to meetings, connecting with other widows, realizing that you're not alone, and this too shall pass, and you can get through this. And that's what I love about the Modern Widows Club, is that it's not just a grief group, but it's a growth group. It's how can I actually grow and move forward and keep my head up and, connect and live with joy again in my life.
You talked about the importance of surrounding yourself with people who understood what you were going through. What advice do you have for other widows or widowers who find themselves forced into this reinvented life like you did?
Yeah, it's really the club that nobody ever wants to join, right? Is losing your spouse. And what we say is we are women of fulfilled marriages, that we so deeply loved our spouses. And when you lose that, it really is the number one cause of stress in life, is losing your spouse. And so when you think about, all of the other things that can happen to you in life are less stressful. I mean, of course, there's terrible things that can happen in life, but it's a very significant moment for anyone who has lost anyone really that you love, but especially a spouse. And so having that common bond with someone else who understands exactly what you're going through. People don't know what to say to you. People don't know how to act around you sometimes. And so when you get together with someone that you have that commonality with, it's like instantly there's just a relaxation, because that I'm bonded. I'm absolutely bonded. We call it Wisters, widow sister. So we're Wisters together. And so anytime that you can find, of course, there's grief groups through churches and all of that. And it's great to have that commonality in grief, but everybody there might be grieving different things, grieving in a different way. And so if you can even find that, we even have subgroups for women who have lost their husbands to suicide, women who, so there's different subgroups even within the Modern Widows Club for even more connection.
Well, and speaking of which, I know that people generally join the group to find support, but even you took it a step further and you became a health and wellness expert for the group. And I know you speak at some of their events and you share things I never thought about how to make meals for your new normal and how to prioritize your health in the middle of grief.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's so easy to put your health on the bottom. I even did it when Stephen was going through his cancer treatments. And, even after he passed, it was like, I don't care about my health anymore. I don't care about what's going to happen to me. And of course I did, but there's just those moments when you're like, all I can do is survive right now. And eating is taking a back burner. Exercise is taking a back burner. I can't sleep because my partner isn't in bed next to me like I'm used to. I mean, there's so many things that happen. And so I think, that because I'm an expert in that, physical wellness piece of nutrition, exercise, sleep, all of that. I've spoken at many of the conferences over the last, probably 5-6 years. And then I just recently started this health and wellness club within the Modern Widows Club. So we have a monthly Zoom and we talk about different topics. I have a challenge each month for the ladies. It might be a squat challenge or a gratitude challenge or a sleep challenge or, different things that can help us overall with that health and wellness. So again, I'll admit that I'm not perfect, and it's been 12 years since I lost my Stephen, and I'm remarried, and so life is a little bit different, but it doesn't matter. It's still, you still have that loss. I still lost, my love. And so I think because I have been able to come to the other side too, it gives other women hope of, okay, I can do this. I can find time to exercise. I can take care of myself. I can make sure that I'm eating. I can learn how to cook again for one instead of, cooking for two or, 5 or whatever, however many children maybe were in the house and now we're out of the house. And so, yeah, it's just helping women along the same journey that I had to go through. And if I can make it just even a slight bit easier for them, then that's very rewarding for me.
And you mentioned your current husband. So at some point you meet another man, and now you've gone from single to married to widow to now married again. So what advice do you have for other widows who would like to find love again?
Mhm. Yeah. So you have to open yourself up. You have to be open to it. And, because I think if you're closed off, if you're not sure, if you're, and of course there's going to be some uncertainty there, but I knew that that I had love in my heart, and that I wanted to share my life again with somebody. And Stephen and I had even talked about it. He said, "You're too young and these boys are too young. I want you to find love again. I want you to find, a father for these boys." And those are those are difficult conversations that you're having, with your very sick spouse. And but knowing that, I had that blessing. And of course, not everyone has that gift to be able to have those conversations if someone had a sudden death or whatever. But just knowing that, I wanted to open myself up again, and that I had love and I had joy in my heart to share with another person. I mean, I think that's the number one step, is you have to be open. And when you're open, then life manifests. I mean, of course, you can go out there and find it and get on a dating app, just like anybody who's single is looking for a partner. But, I truly believe that if you open yourself up to it, the universe responds, and you can, find that connection again.
And your current husband was a package deal. He had two sons as well. So you also had to reinvent yourself as a stepmom. What advice do you have for others who find themselves as a step parent?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. And as a widow, remarrying, it was different because he had an ex-wife. And so my stepkids have a mom, and I don't want to step on those toes. But yet, of course, when they're in our house and in their life, I want to be a good example. I want to, do all that for them. But then John went ahead and adopted my boys. So here he was living with my kids 100% of the time and sharing custody with his own kids. And so, that took a lot of finessing. And his kids were like, all of a sudden, I've got these two new brothers and they're with my dad all the time. And I'm only with my dad part of the time. And, and they were, let's see, Basil and Levi were 5 and 7 when we married. So the other two were 9 and 11. So these are tender ages for that kind of blending. Mm-hmm. And open communication probably is my best advice, that you have to really, talk about it. And I mean, we talk about Stephen all the time still. We have that open communication around, what it's like to combine these families, what it's like to have, stepmom, and what role, we should have, and that kind of thing. And I try to support them as much as I can in their athletics and go to their games and, stuff like that. And so, I think, again, it's about communication. It's about attitude. It's about love. It's about acceptance. And as long as you have those attitudes on things, then it can all, blend together.
That's awesome. I don't know if you call it your motto, but the phraseology, the words that are plastered on your Facebook page and your website is health, life, happiness. How did you come up with that, and why is it so important?
Well, I think, as a dietitian and exercise, personal trainer, all that, health is the pillar. That if you don't have your health, it's hard to have anything else. And so I do think that physical health dictates so much of our life. And so I'm grateful on a regular basis. I do a gratitude exercise every single morning. And a lot of times my health and fitness are on that list of things that I am grateful for. So I don't take it for granted, especially after losing my husband to cancer. We should be grateful for our health on a regular basis. Sometimes we have one of those days where it's hard to find the joy. And you have to really, dig for it. But as long as I can find the joy, then I know that I can emanate the joy. I can spread the joy. I can be the joy for others, but I have to have the joy for myself. And that comes with, living those principles of taking care of myself physically, but also, living with gratitude and not looking back and going, why me? Why did this happen? I never once went back and said, why did Stephen get cancer? Why, Lord, why did you do this to me? Because there's no answer. It's a fruitless exercise to try to find out the why. This is what was dealt to me. This is what, God's plan was for me. And so now I have to say, okay, what am I going to do with it? I'm going to, move forward with joy and love. And that's really a choice that I make, a conscious choice on a regular basis.
I love hearing you say that. I think, in this day and age, we hear a lot about practicing gratitude, but then hand in hand with that, people will talk about toxic positivity and, oh, you're just positive all the time, but that doesn't take the badness or the stress of life away. So hearing you say that, it's just this reminder that it's okay to count your blessings at the same time that you're still dealing with the storms of life.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I think it's good to recognize those difficult times and, obviously the big difficult time of losing my husband, but, there's everyday difficult things that happen. And I think it also put it into perspective for me, kind of that like, don't sweat the small stuff book from a long time ago. It's like, there's so much small stuff that we create drama around. And I'm a low drama person. Like, I don't like to create drama out of things. And I like to kind of go, okay, let's put this into perspective. And 5 years from now, 10 years from now, that's not going to matter at all. So I'm not going to spend any energy on that right now and sort of let it go.
I mentioned at the beginning of the podcast one of your other reinventions as an author, and you have written a couple books. I know that was your goal. You set out to be an entrepreneur, and you did it. Two of them focused on pregnant women's nutrition, and the other on flat belly diet. So listen, you and I are similar ages, and I like to think that I live a healthy lifestyle and try to keep in shape, but man, oh man, menopause is not a friend to the flat belly. So please, give us a couple of tips, if you would, on the side here for the menopausal women who are desperate to reinvent their bodies from flabby to flat.
Girl, I would watch you doing your meteorology for years. I'm like, how has she popped out so many babies and she looks ridiculously good like day after or day of? Like you are the picture of health and wellness. And, but yes, but it gets all of us. I mean, that's the thing is if I had $1 for every, menopausal, postmenopausal, perimenopausal woman that's like 10 pounds around the middle overnight. Yep. And I swear I haven't done anything different.
Right. It was so much easier before.
It is. And so, one of my tips is a little bit of body acceptance. So you're not going to have the body of when you were 20. And it is more difficult. Our metabolism, our bodies are, everything does change. But why does our metabolism go down? Number one reason our metabolism goes down is because we lose muscle as we age. So what can I do to prevent muscle loss? I can exercise. What causes people to fall? Lack of balance. But lack of balance is because of not having muscle mass. So I really think a lot of what we can do in menopause and leading up to that change in life. And by the way, this isn't just for women. Men too lose muscle mass and their testosterone goes down. And so they go through changes, definitely in our 40s, 50s, into 60s and all that too. And so if there's anything you can do is maintain that muscle, even if you can't build anymore, which you still can into your 60s. But if I can just maintain a little bit of that muscle, that's going to help your metabolism on a regular basis. It's going to help you to prevent injuries. Once you get injured, then you're more sedentary and then you lose more. It's like a vicious cycle, right? And then when it comes to nutrition, just, don't do any of the crazy fad stuff. Don't cut out all carbs, but watch your carbs. Are you eating too many carbs? Probably, but that doesn't mean we go from eating too many to none. Watch the alcohol, watch, some of those little extra calories that are sneaking in. Unfortunately, we do have to be a little bit more cognizant of those. But, I don't have necessarily the silver bullet, but I think it's a combination of those things is a little bit of body acceptance. Yeah, I'm not going to have the body that I had before, and that's okay. And you know what? I'm going to love the new body that I do have and what I can do with it and what it still can do. can it still bring me from, can I still paddleboard? Like, I love paddleboarding. We go out to, look at the alligators on the Wekiva River and, that kind of stuff. I can stay on the paddleboard because I have strength. I can do that because I exercise on a regular basis. And so, motivating yourself, not just with what do I look like in a swimsuit, but rather what kind of, activities do I want to do? Do I want to go zip lining in, Puerto Rico with my kids? Well, then I got to be, my 74-year-old mother went zip lining with us last year in Puerto Rico. And I was like, go mom, and so, but if she didn't have the strength and the balance and the fitness to do that, she wouldn't be able to enjoy those things with her grandkids. So, those are the kinds of things that I think we have to motivate ourselves with instead of just focusing on, I have this little spare tire now around my middle. Well, you know what? Okay. But what can you do? Right?
Yes.
So, yeah, I know. Probably not the answer you wanted.
No, I think that's fantastic. Acceptance is a lot of it. And also maybe we can all just go buy your Flat Belly book and get even more tips. So
there you go.
Also, recently, I know you dipped your toe. We teased this at the beginning. You have dipped your toe into yet another reinvention, and that is a chocolate truffle business. Now, I have to say, obviously, it seems kind of weird that somebody focused on a healthy diet and nutrition would start a dessert company. So what's up with that?
Well, if anyone knows me, they know my obsession with chocolate. And so I have been making these chocolates since I was probably 10 years old. We used to go up to my grandma's house at Thanksgiving, and my aunt and my mom and I would sit and make these, different candies. And then we'd split them up between the three of us and bring them to, the holiday party with the, the different chocolates and all that kind of stuff. And everyone's like, oh my gosh, these are so good. And then this year I just said, you know what? I'm going to actually make these for real. And I went to a women's club marketplace thing, and, where they have little tables and you're selling your stuff. And I made $700 selling my chocolate.
Wow.
I was like, okay, so this is really fun. And it's just it's passion. It is a side hustle. I'm not going to quit my day job, but it is a passion. And it's so funny because I was, my friends at USTA at the tennis center get to try all my new creations and all this stuff. And they're like, your face just like lights up whenever you talk about your chocolate business and your chocolates and all this stuff. And it's true. And so I think that's what life is all about, is what are you passionate about? And I truly believe that, yes, I'm a dietitian and I'm making chocolate, but that's the beauty of it.
Tara, thank you so much for being here and being a guest on my podcast. If people want to know more about you, where can they find you or follow you?
Absolutely. So Diet Diva is my website. So it's dietdiva.net. And I am on LinkedIn with just my name. I'm on Instagram, Diet Diva Tara. And my new truffle business is Truffles by Tara.
Well, I know your story of multiple reinventions will inspire and encourage so many others. So thank you again for being here today.
Well, thank you for having me. And you inspire so many people, Amy, with your reinvention and what you're doing too. So I'm honored that you chose to have me.
Thank you. So what about you? Were you inspired by Tara's story? Sometimes we get to choose our reinventions. You can walk away from a career, start a new business, pursue a new hobby or relationship, but sometimes we don't get a choice. Maybe you're fired or furloughed or downsized. Perhaps you find yourself with an illness or disease. Maybe your spouse announces they want a divorce, or they end up with cancer or a stroke or heart attack and leave behind a widow. Sometimes we're forced to reinvent ourselves. And it can be hard to move forward, or certainly to find joy or happiness in such a tragedy. But remember, it is okay to reinvent yourself, even in the midst of trauma or struggle. You're allowed to count your blessings and focus on the reinvention without denying your problems. Whether you want to reinvent yourself or you have to reinvent yourself, remember, reinvention is possible. Go make it happen for you today.